Hey, what's going on, family? How's everyone doing? Before we even get started, let's make it do what it does. Actually, I forgot because this is not scheduled. No one's actually in the room yet. I'm sure a lot of people are gonna pile on in, but I'm gonna hold off on doing the house cleaning because no one's here yet. We'll do that after. Let me just throw this stuff on the screen, all the good stuff. All right, here we go. People are showing up. Hey, Mana12, what's going on? How's everyone feeling? This was just an impromptu. Oh, it's interesting. Daily Mail says Bill Clinton accused of affair with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's procurer. That's interesting. Oh well. Mm. First things first, let's make it do what it does. Go to patreon.com/champagne sharks, become a member, $5 a month. To get access to a bunch of stuff, including newsletters, show notes, access to the voice and chat Discord, and the chance to preview who our podcast guests are and ask them questions. That's always a good thing. Like this video. It's free to like the video. It's free to comment. It's free to like. It's free to subscribe. So do all those things. But yeah, definitely share. Sharing is important. Sharing is caring. We yeah, def- definitely do that. Definitely do that. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Please do those things. And yeah, also if you're interested in Twitch, you can also follow us there. We do simulcast over there. But yeah, just take 10 seconds to like. That's all you have to do. It's really fast. And hey, BL, how's it going? B Scott, how you feeling? How's everything going? Yeah, so just want to talk about a handful of stuff. And this is really interesting, right? And I know when it comes to copyright, YouTube is pretty good, pretty bad with it. But lately, we've been getting no copyright strikes. Knock on wood. That's wood right there. And yeah, so far we've been getting lucky. I don't know what it's been, but we have not been getting copyright strikes. So it looks like the advice people have been giving us has been working. We've been breaking up the videos with commentary, taking time talking on the videos and stuff, and yeah, it's been working. So today we're going to show some MSNBC clips, and hopefully our streak continues. Hopefully we don't get any copyright strikes, because we're going to play some Joy Reid clips, and I just want to show it's a perfect illustration of how funny style people like Joy Reid are. It's like very, very funny style, and you'll see what we mean. You'll see exactly what we mean. But yeah, we've gotten like 8 videos in a row with no copyright strikes, which is pretty good, because for a second we were getting copyright strikes on every video, every last one. So with that said, all that is done. Let's get it popping. Let's get it going. Hey, what's going on, Gold Link? Hey, what's going on, BMBC? How's everyone feeling? Yeah, so I'm gonna pull this up real quick. I played this before in the maybe yesterday or 2 days ago, but I'm gonna play it again. Um, and check this out. And Joy Reid has appeared on the Breakfast Club before, so this is like 7 minutes, and I kind of don't want to play the whole thing. I don't want to eat up 7 minutes at a time, but I don't know where in the video the pertinent part is, so just bear with me. I don't want to subject people through 7 minutes of this. Hopefully they say what I want to hear right up and jump, because I just did this last minute, so I wasn't prepared with the clip. Wrong video. Here we go.
Joining me now is Charlemagne the God of the Breakfast Club on Power 105.
Just gonna talk over it every now and again.
Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me, Joy. How are you?
Yep.
I'm good. So, I don't know if you were able to hear Kareem. We had a little bit of an audio problem toward the end.
Let's see.
But, I want to, first of all, congratulate you on the interview. The interview, people are talking about that last bit of it. That's the part that went viral. But the substance of the interview was really solid. You had very blunt questions for Vice President Biden. They were about substance. They were about what you want to see.
I see what you're saying. Good questions, blunt. They were about substance, telling him that he did a great stuff with his Black Agenda talk. And I'm mostly breaking this up, not because I'm really adding anything, but just trying to keep from that copyright strike.
For the community. Your listeners, I'm sure, give you lots and lots of feedback about what it is that they want from this man. What are people telling you that they want him to do?
Just some really major policy commitments for the Black community.
Okay.
Mainly in the form of economic justice, so we can, tip the scales on some of this wealth inequality in America.
Just talking about wealth inequality.
I hear a lot of people say, we also want him to have a Black woman running mate, but not just any Black woman running mate, one that's going to actually, get in office and care that Black people benefit.
I feel like economic equality, I feel like that is shorthand for reparations,
From our presence there, we need substance and significance over symbolism. And he's already committed to putting the Black woman on the Supreme Court. So I just want him and the Democratic Party to know that it's time to give back to the Black community in a very tangible way. But I can say that, the major point that I'm hearing about is just, economic justice, some form of economic justice.
Economic justice. And I feel like that's kind of code for reparations.
And let me play the apology that Joe Biden gave. He got on a call with Black business leaders and apologized.
I'm going to skip the apology.
That, the Black people are with us.
Right.
That not just Joe.
All right.
Do you think there's a risk that not just Joe Biden, but the Democratic Party in general just takes for granted that, the Black people are with us, so we don't really have to give them anything else. They're going to vote for us regardless. Look, they voted for Joe Biden in overwhelming
numbers. So she's talking about the idea of Black people not voting for Joe Biden.
Do you worry that is the attitude that Democrats are taking toward the Black community?
I mean, I know that's the attitude, that's why I don't even care about the words and the lip service, and the apology is cool, but the best apology is actually a Black agenda. They got to make some real policy commitments.
Hear that? Black agenda.
We got to stop acting like the fact that Blacks are overrepresented in America when it comes to welfare, poverty, unemployment, homelessness, drug addiction, crime, coronavirus. Like, that's no accident. Like, the whole function of systemic racism is to marginalize Black people. And as the great Dr. Claude Anderson says in the book Powernomics, Black society has an out of sight, out of mind attitude about racism. And they don't like to have any discussions of substance about systemic racism. So when you have Black people who have the nerve, the audacity, the unmitigated gall to act like citizens and demand something of our votes, it's a problem. It's just like you got, whites telling us to stay in our place, and you got Black people saying, "Oh, stop! Now is not the time. You're going to get Trump reelected." It has to come to a point where we stop.
Do you hear what he talked about he's criticizing Black people who say
Democrats to show up for Black voters.
He's criticizing Black people who say now's not the time. You're going to mess everything up. This is not the time to talk about not voting.
And what you just said, that is a lot of what I'm hearing of even African Americans saying, no, don't say that. Don't say those things because it might hurt.
She was one of them.
Beating Donald Trump. And this question gets asked to me a lot. And so I'll ask the question to you. What if Joe Biden says, nope, I'm picking Amy Klobuchar. She's my running mate. Then what do you do?
Well, on top of possible Russian interference and voter suppression, Dems have to worry about voter depression. And that's people staying home on election day because they just aren't enthused by the candidate. You can't act like this.
Yeah, so he's talking about staying home. He's making
run a campaign from your basement and, not make some real, policy commitments to the Black community, not listen to some of the demands that the Black community are making. I think, people are sitting around hoping that Trump loses instead of going out there and actually beating him. He has to do something that energizes his campaign, that brings some actual enthusiasm to his campaign. So those 4.4 million Obama voters who stayed home in 2016, more than a third of them Black, don't do that this year. You got to make them come out.
The interview was cut short. You could hear the audio.
Now, one thing you got to realize is she's still kind of trying to have a cake and eat it too, because she doesn't quite say that she's on board the Black agenda stuff. She goes, something that people always ask me, but say she didn't quite fully commit. I think she's kind of feeling out if this grift is for her. She's trying to feel out the pivot. That's what I think. She's trying to feel out the pivot. So she wants to have her cake and eat it too. She wants to be part of this new wave that seems to be kind of trendy, which is now talking about Black agenda and threatening to withhold the vote, especially with all these blue checks on board and how hard it is for the social justice influencers to get into Biden's camp. She's testing it out, but she knows her base are a bunch of Karens and Susans and not the Black community, and she can't go too hard on white liberals. And we showed yesterday, if you go to yesterday's live stream, we showed the amount of backlash she got for this interview. So, she's probably kind of running a little bit scared, right? But what I found absolutely hilarious is, let's look at how she was earlier this year, because she was on a different tip before. She was on a very different tip, and let's see if we can keep that copyright strike from happening. But she's still giving herself plausible deniability on the pivot, but she's trying to ride the wave. She's seeing that Charlamagne is getting more talk than she's gotten in a long time, and she's trying to ride that wave, but not fully commit to it either.
The data point says that over 90% of Black women will vote for Democrats. And so now we have...
This is a Black woman who goes online by Digital Sister, who portrays herself as some kind of Black woman tech expert. And she's one of the social justice influencers too. But she portrays herself as a tech influencer, and she was brought on to discredit all the people online, including the ADOS hashtag, who have been asking for a Black agenda, as to paint them as Russian bots and spoilers and fake operatives, or, people that you can't listen to, and dismiss them as not being real people.
A whole campaign getting several campaigns, by the way. We have identified at least 5 existing campaigns that are focused on getting Black people to do only one thing, not vote for the Democrats.
And can you name one of those 5 campaigns? I mean, we put up from the report that you're saying that there's a conversation about reparations that has to do with it. There's a criminal justice conversation.
Yes.
There's an
reparations.
Go on.
Mm-hmm. Reparations.
So basically, if you're asking for all these things, you're a bot. If you're asking for these things. Oh, is this who y'all were calling Analog Auntie? I heard y'all talking about Analog Auntie. I didn't realize it was her. Let me back that up one more time so people can totally catch it.
You name one of those 5 campaigns. I mean, we put up from the report that you're saying that there's a conversation about reparations that has to do with it. There's a criminal justice conversation.
So people talking about reparations, criminal justice, immigration,
reparations, immigration.
So people at your hands here on the screen. ADOS. So if anyone has the hashtag ADOS, they're probably a bot or agent of chaos. Blexit, which means Black people exiting the Democratic Party or not voting. You're probably kind of agent of chaos. See, this is back when they thought Kamala Harris had a strong chance. This was when Kamala Harris was one of the front runners and a presumptive nominee. It's like, Hillary 2.0 or KOC, Karen of color. So they were trying to ride on her wave because they would have a nice gravy train under Kamala Harris. So when people were talking about Kamala Harris as a cop and Kamala Harris is not offering tangibles and not offering stuff, Joy Reid kind of tried to show her value by throwing us into both Kamala Harris and the DNC by trying to basically shame Black voters and discredit Black voters who were asking for a Black agenda by so no, she put tangibles, ADOS, foundational Black Americans. So Yvette Carnell's crowd Tariq Nasheed's crowd, and then they lumped him in with Black Voices for Trump. To kind of like Trump supporters. So they're either bots or Trump supporters. Anyone who asks for a black agenda, and then anyone who says walk away from the voting booth or the Democratic Party is also someone to be discredited. And let's keep going.
And anything that has to do with the criminal justice system. So the reason that the targeting of Kamala around being a cop is important is because anything that hinges on criminal justice becomes a divisive issue and is being used as a weapon right now. Are there real issues? Absolutely. I want to make sure that people don't dismiss the fact that there are some real issues that we're talking about. I think you had Cory Booker on here talking about police brutality. These are key, important issues to our community. We know that this is the case because in the previous election in 2016, Black Lives Matter was targeted because of their campaign that was focused on police brutality.
Right.
It's still existing. It's still happening right now. It's just that we're not seeing a way to handle this and do a counter narrative.
Very quickly, we're out of time. How do people tell the difference between the real, genuine thing of Black Lives Matter and the ones that are just designed to make you not vote? How do you even tell?
So basically,
by the language that they use.
And this is one of the things that was happening is that a lot of these people are people like us, like people who follow us, who kind of realized that Black Lives Matter was kind of a okie doke, was kind of a shit itself. So they're making that another way to tell these so-called fake black people or bots or whatever. They want a black agenda. They're threatening not to vote. They want tangibles. They use hashtags like ADOS or Blexit or whatever. She tries to portray them that if they're not bots, Russian bots or agents, then they must be working with Trump. So she puts black voters with Trump up there. And it's because a lot of them criticize Black Lives Matter as sellouts or ineffective or just shills are looking for a position at the table. They say that down talking Black Lives Matter is another sign, and then she's giving more signs of what you can tell, and how to tell apart the good black people to listen to as opposed to the black people who are telling you not to vote. And this is what she says. And mind you, she portrayed no data, no studies, nothing. She said this with zero data. This is very important to say. She just came out there and said, hey, I'm Digital Sister. I have a Twitter and a website, and I'm Digital Sister. And, that makes me an expert. And here's what I have to say. And she didn't give a single lick of data.
Use most of the time, but if you see anyone who says basically tangibles or you're not getting our vote without us getting something back, you should start to pause and take a better look at what they're saying, better look at those accounts and seeing what they're saying. And also don't forget, same rules apply. If these accounts are brand new,
so I mean, you see the bullshit. Like, she's just sitting there kicking and being there with Charlamagne. So I gotta say, as bad as her white liberal listeners are, the way they turned on her and were, let their racism show, in a way they're kind of right that she sold them one bill of goods and is now doing another, she was catering and emboldening those people and telling them what they want to hear and throwing black people with real concerns under the bus. So that's like the worst. Look at the thing. When you sell out yourself, and then you sell out loosely with her because I don't think she really has core principles to sell out, But if you have like no integrity, let's say that if you have no integrity, the people that you're giving up your integrity for, they already lose a little bit of respect for you. They might let you be a mascot. They might let you, they might use you or whatever and give you little butter biscuits and trinkets. But deep down, they don't respect you. Like, a lot of times they might hate the person with principles more than they hate you, but they actually low-key respect them more than they respect you. But the one thing that they hate is the sellout. That's like the double sellout or the double and that's what they're kind of seeing her as, with her having Charlemagne on, because she just spent a couple months ago having so-called experts on to say the exact opposite, and then she comes back on and is just riding this next wave. And they're crazy, those white liberals that are in the corner. They are racist, and there's no fixing that or taking that away. And when you actually look at it, it's pretty bad. I mean, what she did, to a certain degree, I can understand why they feel betrayed. Because yeah, it's pretty crazy. Somebody also sent me this, and this was pretty bad, I thought, because Selena Maxwell is one who's kind of, there's two types of blue check things going on. There's blue check apologism, which is like making excuses for Biden and taking over and taking his side, and kissing his ass. And then there's what Joy Reid and the other Angela Rye and Amanda Seals, where they flipped and they've become Claude Anderson types. They've become Yvette types, talking about black agenda, reparations, withhold our vote, And Joy Reid, I think what she's doing is she's in the middle. She's trying to see which camp is going to win. So she's kind of doing a little performative overtures, in both directions. That was very non-committal what she did with Charlemagne, but she's playing the field. That's what she's doing. She's playing the field. But I think Zerlina Maxwell is one of the ones who has planted her flag in the I'm staying in the DNC show side. I am not going. She might still do that pivot if the wave becomes strong enough, but for now, she's sticking with that pivot. And then someone sent me this. I can't find the full clip. I've looked everywhere. It's only last Friday, so it might not be on yet. But this is from Chris Hayes. And Sam Cedar and Zelina Maxwell were on talking about the Joe Biden thing, right? So peep it out.
Well, what I was also struck was by Charlemagne's follow-up, which is I want something material to bring back to my community. And Joe Biden had no answer for that. I mean, he said, I've authorized the Voting Rights Act. Well, I mean, let's be honest. Every single senator in 2006 or 7, I mean, except for maybe 4, and I'm including the vast majority of Republicans, also reauthorized the Voting Rights Act. That's not that should be a baseline.
Yeah.
Never mind for a Democratic senator, any senator for that matter. And so the fact that he
Yep.
couldn't respond with, well, I'm glad I know you want stuff for your community, and here's some of the ideas that I have to bring you some material benefits. So, I mean, I agree with Zerlina. I think we should have a vice president, a woman of color. But I would also like to see that vice president, woman
Yep.
of color, offer and bring to the ticket some plans and some proactive measures to bring material benefit to people. I mean, I think that's hugely important, and I think that's got overshadowed at the end of his question.
Now,
well,
I want you to repeat what he said. I don't have the previous stuff that came before it, right? But you can kind of get it from the context of what happened. But basically, Zelina Maxwell just came on and was just saying, like, all she had to say about it was, hey, that's why we need to get a woman VP in there. Like, she just came in just to make it about the same thing she's always been talking about, which is trickle down representation. She thinks if she gets a woman of color in there, that she might get a direct line to getting White House and plum gigs because, sister girl's gonna look out for her or something. So she's still going for a trickle down representation. And Sam Cedar, the white guy, has to be the one who says, yeah, honestly, I don't think that's enough. That's a low ask. What's the point of getting a black woman president in there if she doesn't have a hard back agenda and all this stuff. So, and that's exactly what I was going to get at. Like, Sam Cedar is better on this than her, and that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing, and it's kind of funny. Do you know what this is like, right? And I'm going to use one of my analogies, but you ever like drive in traffic and you just stay in one lane and you just say, I'm just going to ride this lane out, and you see somebody else constantly switching lanes left and right like a maniac, right? And you're like, man, y'all dudes always stay. This is a dude for you, man. This dudes always get to the point. Dudes always get to the point, man. You know, and you're there's somebody who's like speeding, going fast, low, switching from lane to lane in traffic, driving like a maniac, you know, trying to be so clever, and they're trying to see all the angles. They think they're like the Nostradamus of driving. They think they can just figure it all out. You know what I'm saying? They think they can just and you see them and they think they're all good and whatever. And then when you hit the red light or you hit the traffic, that same person is either right next to you or worse, even behind you. Like, they're too clever for their own good. You know, they think they can outsmart everything and everybody, and they end up if they just stuck to something and committed, they would have been better. Yeah, this is real talk, Sly. Sly's dropping that knowledge, you know. But and that's what these people are. These people are too clever by half, and they're always trying to jump into the lane that looks to be moving the fastest. And then they end up first off being seen. Everyone sees them and sees what they look like, you know. And a lot of times they don't even end up where they want to go. They end up in a worse place or in an accident, crashing or getting pulled over for reckless driving, like doing too much for too little. Hey, Dorian Sapiens, how's it going? What are our Twitch peoples? You know, yeah. So, oof. It's a mess. It's a real mess, and I hate reusing that phrase all the time, but there's no other way I can put it. I don't know how else to put this stuff. Like, they've really have to be in an existential crisis right now. They have to be, because they don't know who to be and what to be. They have no idea what to be. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to read something that I read part of last time, and I want to read it again this time. But Racist Love by Frank Chin. I think it's one of the best things about racism that there is, and I'm going to read some of it. I'm going to jump around, but it's actually Frank Chin and Jeffrey Paul Chan, but everyone forgets Jeffrey Paul Chan. So let me say Jeffrey Paul Chan, but Frank Chin, Jeffrey Paul Chan. But I want you to think about this, because this is going down to that Karen lady, that Amy Cooper lady who basically tried to lynch that guy Christian Cooper. I think there's been some interesting discourse around that, and I think it's a perfect example of racist hate versus racist love, and both of them are in play in that case, right? So, Racist Love by Frank Chin and Jeffrey Paul Chan, 1972. So, two Chinese American gentlemen wrote this, right? They wrote it mainly to talk about Asians, but it applies to Black people too. White racism enforces white supremacy. White supremacy is a system of order and a way of perceiving reality. Its purpose is to keep whites on top and set them free. Colored minorities in white reality are stereotypes. Let me repeat that. Colored minority in white reality are stereotypes. Colored minorities in white reality are stereotypes. Each racial stereotypes comes in two models: the acceptable model and the unacceptable model. So you have the unacceptable hostile Black stud who has his acceptable counterpart in the form of step and fetch it. For the savage, kill crazy Geronimo, there is the acceptable Tonto and the Hollywood version of Cochise. For the mad dog General Santa Anna, there's the acceptable Cisco Kid and Pancho. For Fu Manchu and the Yellow Peril, there is the acceptable Charlie Chan and his number one son. The unacceptable model is unacceptable because he cannot be controlled by whites. The acceptable model is acceptable because he is tractable. There is racist hate and racist love. If the system works, the stereotypes assigned to the various races are accepted by the races themselves as reality, as fact, and racist love reigns. So basically, when white supremacy is working, minorities internalize both the racist hate stereotype and the racist love stereotype. And the minorities waste a lot of time doing two things when it comes to white people because they've internalized both these stereotypes. They spend a lot of time trying to distance themselves from the racist hate stereotype and prove to white people that they don't fit that negative stereotype. But another thing that a lot of minorities do who internalize stereotypes is they try to conform to the racist love stereotype to curry favor with white people and almost like pimp themselves to white people. It's almost like, that I know this is what I have to be. I know this is the stereotype I have to be for you to love me. I'm going to show you that I'm that stereotype. So I'm going to show you I got. So there's some black people who try to play up their swag or be performatively street credibility, not because that's who they are or to connect to other black people, but because they know that's what white people want to see. You see that a lot with these black women will save you types, that neo-mammyism, and black women are the most reliable voting bloc, and we're gonna save everybody. You have that. There's some black guys who love playing up the black buck thing on purpose, but to kind of cash in on white women with Mandingo fantasies. You see all this stuff, but something I saw pretty interesting, right, is this Christian Cooper thing. A lot of that's been playing out. People falling all over themselves to point out that he's not the black brute, that he's not the black thug, he's not the racist hate stereotype. So that's the major reason why Amy Cooper is wrong. But also people playing up the racist love stuff, like describing him like a mascot or a pet or an acceptable sex symbol, like the acceptable stud, not the rapist brute, but the hot, ravishing, exotic brute. So a lot of white liberals have really been kind of showing their ass with this way that they're talking about him. There's a lot of grossness in how they're talking about him, and I'll show you an example. Right. So Jill Filipovic is one of those white liberal blue checks. She's a total coastal elite types that conservatives talk about, that totally fits that world and stuff. And this woman is a blue check too. She's a white lady, and I think she's a liberal. But keep in mind, by the way, that Christian Cooper is gay, right? The guy that was there. But this is what she said about Christian Cooper. She goes, "Speaking as a single white woman, if I encountered # Christian Cooper in the ramble, I'd use my phone to get his number, not call the cops." And she gives like the infatuated emoji with the heart eyes, but she hashtags it Black Lives Matter, and it's like, I think she should have hashtagged it like Black Penis Matters, because that is kind of thirsting. And I don't know if they don't know that he's gay or if they don't care, or maybe because he's muscular and black and whatever, they it almost outweighs his gayness, because part of sometimes the same trait can play both in the racist hate and the racist love, because like the perceived hypermasculinity by white people, a of black men can work in making them seem like the rapist brute, which is the racist hate stereotype, but it also might make him seem like the super manly, ravishing lover, you know? So that type of perceived hypermasculinity even outweighs his gayness, you know, where she still kind of sees him as like that muscular black man, even gay, is still to her hyper masculine and registers almost hyper hetero, you know, and still gets her moist. And then Jill Filipovic tweeted this: "So Christian Cooper is a snack and a nerd and not at all intimidating." So look at all the racist love stuff there, right? He's one of the good blacks. He's like a blurred, not at all intimidating, you know, which shouldn't really have to matter, you know, because if you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If he was like looked more like a thug but was in the right, you know, would that have been okay, you know? But so Christian Cooper is a snack and a nerd and not at all intimidating, which makes the story all the more egregious. But even if a person does physically fit your idea scary, you still don't get to call the cops on an innocent man who didn't do anything. But she could have just left that, you know, she could have said, you don't get to call the cops on an innocent man who didn't do anything, and leave it there. She didn't have to add the stuff about him being a snack. A snack means like, you know, you're hot, I can eat you all up. And somebody retweeted this saying, "This is not fuck, marry, kill. You have other options besides hypersexualizing black men or calling a hit on them." And I thought that was a very good tweet, right? Because this person captured it all right there. You have other options besides hypersexualizing black men versus calling in a hit on them. And that's kind of how white supremacists are. If they're not doing the racist hate, a lot of times they give you the bargain of turning you into the racist love. And sadly, a lot of black people just care about the racist hate, and they either don't recognize or realize the racist love and how demeaning and demoralizing it is. But not just that, the racist love in a way almost validates the racist hate, because the racist love exists as a contrast and a counterpoint to the racist hate. So by validating the racist hate, you know, like one of the things about pushing the "I'm one of the good ones" narrative is that it reinforces that the other ones really are the bad ones, you know? But so you have the people who don't realize or are oblivious or are just so happy to be getting treated nice instead of bad, you know, that they take the racist love and don't realize what's pernicious or bad about it, or that it reinforces all the stereotypes, even the bad ones. There are a lot of people who actually are savvy enough to recognize these things and actually try to weaponize them and cash in on them cynically, you know? There's a lot of that going on. But yeah, a lot of the discourse by white people around the Christian Cooper thing, describing him, is like just really creepy to me. A lot of racist love and validating of racist hate stereotypes on both sides of the aisle, and not really seeing him as a him, you know, talking about, oh, he went to Harvard, he was the editor of Marvel, so he's a blurred, you know, I love blurred, he's one, you know, he's Urkel, but he's a hot Urkel, you know, he's got that he's a blurred mandingo, like, you know, all this stuff. And it's just, yeah, liberals are terrible, like, even when they're trying. And there was a study that came out last year that I thought was very, very good. So white liberals dumb themselves down when they speak to black people, a new study contends. And you have recently joined the book club. Before each meeting, one member of the literary collective sends an email to the club secretary offering a few thoughts of the assigned text. This month is your turn to compose the brief review. A new study suggests that the words you use may depend on whether the club secretary's name is Emily, a stereotypically white name, as the study says, or Lakeisha, a stereotypically black name. If you're a white liberal writing to Emily, you might use words like melancholy or euphoric to describe the mood of the book, whereas you might trade these terms out for the simpler sad or happy if you're corresponding with Lakeisha. But if you're a white conservative, your addiction won't depend on the presumed race of your interlocutor. So they found that liberals are actually more likely to change their language and talk down to black people. I thought it was a pretty interesting. Stuff. It's a pretty interesting thing, but yeah, I thought that was pretty. I thought that was something interesting. But when I saw how the people were talking so condescendingly and like he was a child or a mascot or a fuck toy or a dildo with legs or a harmless plush doll about Christian Cooper, it kind of made me think about that study, and it made me want to hit it up. But there's one last thing I want to talk about, and then that'll be it for the day. I think that'll be enough because I can keep these things short nowadays. Give me a second. I'm just gonna pull up this last thing of an exchange that I had that I think is very, very disturbing. Actually, there's two things. Actually, there's two things. It's one last thing, but there's two things about the one last thing that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the recent case with Ahmaud Arbery, but also with George Floyd in Minneapolis and that murder. Right now, I saw this article and it was horrible. I'm gonna put the article up now, and it's about how a lot of these blue checks and stuff, even when they try to weigh in on stuff, they can't do it right because they're just too mixed up. And I saw this thing, and this lady posted this. Let me put it up now. Really cringe. I love my white boyfriend, but there's one thing he can never understand. How can we properly mourn the loss of a black person who has lost their life while sitting next to someone who can never know that deep-seated grief? Laura Cathcart Robbins. Now, to me, there's something just kind of weird and icky about how these murders and stuff are happening, and your main concern is kind of how does it affect my white husband or whatever, you know? Like, I understand, like, kind of being concerned about, like, if you have an actively bad experience where they invalidate you or act racist or maybe hit you with some all lives matter stuff. Yeah, see you later, B. Scott. Thanks for coming out. There's not much left anyway, so you're not going to miss much. Yeah, so, you know, I kind of get it, you know, that you might be a little concerned about it. But to write an article, to make that your main focus, like, what's up with that? And then the article continues, girl, I just need to say this out loud. That's a quote. She goes, I'm part of a group that meets every week. 4 of us in the group are black women in relationships with white men. After the details of the March killing by police in Louisville, Kentucky of Breonna Taylor in her home in a botched raid were brought out to light last week, we kind of held an emergency meeting. We need to talk out our grief, anger, and despair, and we need to ask some questions that we wouldn't feel entirely safe posing in another space. When black people are killed in incidents like this, how can we be angry or afraid of white people when the men that we love are white people? How can we properly mourn the loss of a white person who has lost their life for freedom while sitting next to someone who could never know that deep-seated grief or that fear? How can we share, and this is the sentence that really bothered me, how can we share these feelings with our men without alienating them, without feeling like they need to fix or change anything for us? And it's like, if you have to worry about alienating them, that's pretty weird to me. That's creepy. That's like, why are you, and also, what is with this thing? What is with this part of it, right? How do you have a support group dedicated to, it's like Underground Railroad for interracial dating? It's weird. Like, how do you have a support group, basically? Because that's basically what this is, a support group for you and your friends who are dating white guys to talk about, you know, it's like, you know, you're hiding in the cellar of the Underground Railroad, you know, like meeting and talking. Like, this is weird. And that's something that I was kind of talking about before, where I was talking about how a lot of these people, when you see them with their black friends or their black social circles, they tend to have black social circles of other tokens or other white identified black people. So even in their black circles, they're white centered. They don't really have genuine or regular black friendships or black social circles. Like a lot of the blue checks that you see getting together and doing stuff performatively or having the mutual aid societies, they're kind of coalitions of tokens, and it's just a strange article, and she's kind of a messy herself in general. She goes, Scott and I were bonded from the first hour that we met 12 years ago while checking into an Arizona rehab. I was a wreck, unable to stop drinking and taking pills. I was also in the middle of a divorce, trying to get well for the sake of my 2 sons. He didn't try to fix me. Rather, as a newly sober, divorced father of 2 girls, he simply validated what I was feeling. And, they met in rehab. He relapsed. A lot of oversharing. I don't know. One thing I've always talked about these people, they can't just get in and get out. Like, you saw how Frank Chin wrote that article, and he just gets to the point. This is what racist love is. These people write everything like a blog post or a diary or oversharing, and you always have to get through. You saw it in the Michael Harriot piece about why Biden needs a black woman VP. They always either do this dissertation on wokeness that's tangentially related to what's going on, or excessive, confessional. Like, I don't know why this meet cute rehab thing is very necessary. But then she goes to, I don't exactly remember the first time I sensed a societal divide in our relationship. Was it in 2012 when Jordan Davis was murdered in Jacksonville, Florida by a white man for playing his music too loudly? Or might it have been in 2014 when Michael Brown was slain by a policeman in Ferguson? With each passing incident, certain facts of our shared life begin to feel more important. The rooms of recovery where he and I have sought refuge for the past 12 years are primarily white spaces. Our shared friendships are mostly with white people. Our conversations and the codes that we use to communicate with each other are those commonly found in white American culture. I need to be clear here. This is not about how Scott reacts to these instruments. When black people are murdered and terrorized, Scott is outraged, defeated, and afraid. It's not that we see these injustices differently. I never needed to convince Scott that Black Lives Matter or why such a movement was necessary in our country. When Ahmaud Arbery was killed in February in Georgia, it was Scott, not me, who went for a run on Arbery's birthday, posting the miles he ran on social media in solidarity. Like, oh my God. So he's not that bad. When Ahmaud Arbery died, he did a run, and he posted the miles of his run on social media. Like, yeah. How could you have any problems? Like, when anyone who goes through that, like, a run is probably going to do anyway. Like, like, how does that help anybody going on a run? So she's definitely part of the white ally industrial complex. Like, the bare minimum a woke bay needs to get props. So, the more Scott listens patiently and tries to learn and understand how he can be an ally, my heart wants to burst open with pride and relief. He cares. He really does, and she goes, I'm proud for my little affinity group, which is a nice way of saying support group or Swirler Underground Railroad. But otherwise, the fact that Scott and I don't share a racial identity has the power to put us on separate sides of the sofa every time a tragic story about a black person is in the news. It's funny? She said this is not about how Scott feels, but everything in it is about how Scott feels. She just says it because she knows that she's not supposed to think like that. But everything in this is pretty much about how Scott feels, and basically there's no insight in this. This is a very shallow, low insight piece. You don't learn anything. There's no type of insight. It's just confessional. It's just pure confessional, and that's what counts for a lot of race writing, just any type of writing today. It's just a diary entry, a confessional with no type of real insight beyond the shallow. Just confessional discursions throughout the piece, or wokeness 101 summaries just cut and paste off of Wikipedia, and then just bare minimum insights. There's a lot of that. Like, there's no exploration and there's no insight. It's born from something. It's about something, but there's nothing meaningful or insightful to say about something. It just sterilely replicates a type of woke article among blue checks that's almost like a meme at this point. It's like a template. It's just a template. It doesn't explore anything at all, you know. And this is true. Like, it's almost insight accidentally, because it's insight by reading between the lines. Like, what she's saying has no insight, but as you're laughing your ass off, she's telling on herself a lot. And so these things are insightful, but not in the way that they want. And I want to kind of show this. The rest of her articles. The rest of her articles, because I pulled up her whole list. I clicked the name, and she has articles like, and there's just so first world problem articles. Hackers are trolling my virtual reality meetings with racist attacks, and I don't feel safe. I needed a drink and more in order to have sex with my husband. Is there such a thing as a harmless crush when you're married? I'm a mom and I couldn't stop drinking and using. Here's what that's like. Some more confessional stuff. My ex-husband married my old friend. They told me they were having a baby. Like, okay. Like, I don't know. Why is HuffPost printing like her diary? Like, this is why, as bad as these media layoffs are, and as much as I blame it on their business model, and as much as I blame it on the trivialization of everything and how bad the economy is and neoliberalism and the Silicon Valley ethos being applied to everything, of treating everything like just getting clickbait. Another reason we have to admit that a lot of these media layoffs happen is because a lot of these organizations have just become blogs, and their employees just bloggers, like not real journalists or real thinkers or whatever. So they're very expendable, And this was the article I really wanted to go into. This was the worst one. I was the only person at Elizabeth Gilbert and Cheryl Strayed's Black Magic Retreat. I'm sorry, Brave Magic Retreat. The whole scene looks like it could be a spread right out of Goop magazine. And it's like, you live your whole life like this. What do you expect? You said that your friend circles, your everything. The only Black people that you hang out with are your Swarter Underground Railroad types, where you kind of hide in refuge about, how you keep getting worried that at any minute your white man's going to turn on you. Because she was downplaying a real fear there. She was trying to actively trivialize it as she was telling the truth. But there's a part of her that doesn't feel safe, and that she's kind of realizing there's a racial powder keg happening, and the guy I'm with is not a down-ass dude, and I'm kind of like, she's not really concerned really about the Black people getting killed so much as she's concerned about what she thinks of as her dream situation, which is being with the white man, being ruined by pesky reality, right? So then she goes, first of all, have you ever read Eat, Pray, Love, or Elizabeth Gilbert? It's terrible. And it's just a terrible ethos, and it's total Karen narcissism masked as deepness and reality, deepness and spirituality that you can imagine. So she goes, my stomach begins to churn the moment I take place at the back of the 200+ person check-in line. It isn't churning because of the length of the line. It's churning because I am the only Black person in it. Craning my neck to look as far down the line as possible, all I see are natural blonde ponytails and top buns, whose wearers look like they were born holding a yoga mat in one hand and a mason jar in the other. But this is the life that you seek out. Like what are you doing? Like, and it's weird. Like, how does she live her life? It's just a weird, exhausting way to live. As I look further down the line now, I see a few silver-haired white women. I see 3 or 4 brown women, Middle Eastern, Indian, Pakistani, and 5 Asian women. One I meet tells me that she is Korean American. I find out later that there are 11 men in attendance. I also. But once the line that forms behind me is as long as the line in the front, I am stung by this most unfathomable reality. I am the only black one. There are over 600 people here. I have been the only one before. I was the only black student in class many times when I was in grade school. I was the only black parent many times when my kids were little. I'm often the only black person in my recovery meetings, on the tennis court, and in workout groups. But I didn't know my first ever retreat would be so massively big. And it hadn't even vaguely occurred to me that out of 600 people, I might be the only black one. I am more than just shocked. I am deeply saddened. And you know what this article reminds me of? It reminds me of an Onion article from back in the day, and this was the Onion article. This is what her life is like. Like, how do you keep? First of all, she's what you call a Karen of color. Like she is technically black or biracial or whatever, but she is a total Karen of color. But yeah, her talking about, I've been the only white person here. I've been the only white person in yoga class, but I didn't think at an Elizabeth Gilbert Eat, Pray, Love thing I'd be the only one. This is like, why do all these homosexuals keep sucking my cock? That's what it is. Like, what is the commonality here? Like, I think you can start predicting what's going on. Like, maybe the problem is, the same way that the fake guy in his article, why do all these homosexuals keep sucking my cock, is actually just gay. Like, you just like white people. You like being in white spaces. You like being the only one. That's on you. That's on you. Like you're not a victim here. You're not an accident. You can avoid being the only one very easily. It's not that hard. It's really not. Like, I could have told you from jump that like next she can go to the Goop conference by Gwyneth Paltrow and be shocked there too, and then write another useless piece about it. But this is her podcast, because I searched her bio, and her podcast is called The Only One in the Room Podcast, and she hosts it with her white husband. So about the podcast, hosted by me, Laura Cathcart Robbins, a writer and recovery thriver and survivor, I found myself in a too familiar position. On September 2018, this is how supposedly traumatizing this thing was. It inspired me to make a whole podcast just about this topic. I was the only black woman in the room at Brave Magic, a famed writers retreat. After it was over, I wrote about my only one experience in the Huffington Post and started collecting, and comments started flooding into my DM from people who are all races, ethnicities, creeds, and nationalities who have felt othered. I interviewed a person about their only one story each episode and address as many of those DMs as possible. In this podcast, you'll hear raw, vulnerable accounts from people who are like most of us, who are eager to connect. My hope is that the only one in the room will inspire a change of perspective in how we all see and hear each other's stories. So yeah, I mean, that's terrible. That's really bad. And I think we really have to do a purge of these people. And these people are taking up a lot of the spots that could be going to black writers with more insightful things to say. And I feel like this is why representation doesn't work. This is why I fear who would become a black VP, why a black VP is not enough. Like, a black VP could be a person whose memoir, when it's all said and done, won't be about all the fighting they did to help black people. It'll be called The Only One in the Oval or something like that. It's yeah. And not only is she monetized being special by being the only one, the whole thing I think is kind of a humble brag, honest. I was the only one on the tennis court. I was the only one on this. Like, like kind of low-key stunting that she's not living the life that other black people. Oh yeah, this would be great. And this is why Hamilton is such a popular thing with this crowd and strivers and representation crowd. Like, it even has a song in it. That's a perfect example of a thing where they give away. It has deliberate insight, but that's the accidental insight. There's a major song in Hamilton I think really describes what's probably Lin-Manuel Miranda's whole worldview. I want to be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens, you know? And the whole song is about that. And it's as terrible as any other song from that thing, but it really ties down the worldview of these people. You know, she wants to be in the room where it happens, but then she gets mad that she's the only one in the room, but not really that mad, because if too many people show up in the room, she loses her unique status, you know? So yeah, the other thing I was going to talk about, we hit an hour. I'm not going to talk about it, so I'll save it for next time. But before you go, hit like, comment, share, subscribe. So before you head out there, you know, just hit the like button before we leave. Just do that. And don't forget to go to patreon.com Champagne Sharks as well. Definitely do that. Definitely do that. That really helps us. Definitely do that. So go to patreon.com/Champagne Sharks and like, comment, share, subscribe. But most importantly, just like on the way out. And thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Everybody be good and enjoy your Wednesday. Peace.